They told you Bitcoin was freedom, that the world had finally escaped its masters, that money no longer answered to banks or kings or gods. But history never dies. It just learns to code. 5 centuries ago, in the candlelit rooms of Florence, a man named Machiavelli wrote of power, how it hides, how it moves, how it survives. He lived among princes and bankers in a world where gold ruled faith and faith ruled men. Today, that same world hums again, not in palaces but in server farms, not in ledgers bound by leather, but in chains made of light. The dream of freedom repeats. But every revolution breeds its new rulers. Every system of liberation becomes a blueprint for control. And so, the question returns. Who truly rules this digital Florence? The coders, the miners, the markets, or the same invisible hands that ruled before, patient, silent, eternal, because in the age of Bitcoin, kings wear no crowns. They write no laws. They simply design the systems the rest of the world believes in, and that is the oldest strategy of all. Florence once glittered with gold florins, coins stamped not only with value but with faith. Merchants called them currency. Machiavelli called them weapons, because in that city, wealth was never just about trade. It was about influence. Those who printed the coins shaped the crown. Centuries later, the hum of servers replaced the clang of mints, and once again, a new currency appeared, born from rebellion, wrapped in idealism, whispered to be incorruptible. Bitcoin, a symbol of trust without authority, freedom without permission, money without masters. But Machiavelli would have smiled. He would have seen through the poetry. Because every new system of liberation is simply a new architecture of power waiting to be occupied. In Renaissance Florence, the Medici family became the invisible empire. They didn't need armies. They financed them. They didn't wear crowns. They crowned others. Their true genius was subtlety, controlling institutions that believed they were free. Bitcoin, in its infancy, held that same innocence. Its creators were revolutionaries, cryptographers, libertarians, dreamers. They wanted to erase the tyranny of banks, but even they forgot what Machiavelli warned. The desire to be free is never enough. Freedom requires the ability to govern. So, when the world adopted Bitcoin, governance returned, quietly, efficiently, invisibly. The miners became the Medici of the digital age. Their machines, humming in anonymous warehouses, were the new mints of Florence. Their energy replaced soldiers. Their algorithms replaced decrees. They fought not with swords but with hash power, invisible wars for validation. And as always, consolidation followed innovation. The dream of decentralization narrowed into a handful of pools. The network was global, yet its heartbeat pulsed from a few unseen vaults. Each one holding the power to decide what the world would call truth. It wasn't tyranny. It was mathematics, designed, predictable, and obedient. That is what makes it perfect. Machiavelli taught that the most stable rulers govern through systems, not commands. The blockchain achieved exactly that. It doesn't require obedience, it encodes it. Consensus replaces authority, protocol replaces punishment. A system so pure in design that people worship it as incorruptible, unaware that purity itself is the most useful illusion of all. Every transaction, every timestamp, every mind block is a quiet act of belief. And belief, Machiavelli knew, is the foundation of all power. Bitcoin didn't destroy trust, it redefined it, from faith in people to faith in code. And yet, faith it remains, because few truly understand the code. They don't read it, they believe in it. They trust that somewhere someone honest is keeping it pure. And that, Machiavelli would whisper, is the perfect design. When the governed defend their own governance, the prince can sleep peacefully. Florence thrived on this same paradox. Citizens believed they ruled themselves, but every decision, every decree passed through the Medici's shadowed networks of debt and obligation. Crypto citizens too believe in autonomy, trading, staking, holding, yet their every move flows through exchanges, miners, and whales. Decentralization didn't destroy hierarchy, it digitized it. The new bankers aren't born of families, they're born of algorithms, anonymous, tireless, and above consequence. They issue no decrees, yet their updates rewrite the fabric of the economy. Their influence grows not by charisma but by code, and the crowd calls it progress. Machiavelli's Florence believed that power should appear virtuous. Modern finance believes that power should appear decentralized. Both are masks. The face behind them is the same: design, incentive, leverage. You can feel it in the language. Words like consensus, community, open source. Beautiful, comforting, and above all, believable. They make control sound cooperative and hierarchy sound democratic. Machiavelli would admire the elegance, a world where obedience feels like participation. Look closer at the symbolism. Bitcoin's first block contained a message. The Times, EO3 Jan 2009. Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. It was protest disguised as prophecy. But even that act was Machiavellian, a statement to define an enemy, to unite a movement, to claim moral legitimacy. The Medici funded cathedrals for the same reason, to sanctify their control under the guise of virtue. In every age, rebellion becomes ritual. The crypto revolution, like the Florentine Renaissance, began with idealists and ended with architects. Those who could translate emotion into structure, chaos into protocol. They became the new princes, ruling over a people who believed themselves ungoverned. And yet, the illusion continues because it must. Without it, faith collapses. Without faith, code is just text. Bitcoin endures not because of its technology, but because of its mythology, the sacred story of liberation. And every believer, every trader, every miner plays their part in keeping that myth alive. Machiavelli would say this is not deception, it's necessity. For even a republic needs a religion. And Bitcoin's religion is trust, not in kings, but in the unseen system itself. So the Renaissance repeats. Florence rises again, this time not in marble, but in data. Its new artists are developers. Its new patrons are venture funds. Its new saints are anonymous founders with cryptographic halos. And in the shadows, the same principle remains. That control is never taken by force. It's built through structure, belief, and design. That is the renaissance of digital power. A world reborn in light, yet ruled by those who understand the darkness beneath it. Machiavelli warned that the most dangerous illusion is freedom without understanding, and that illusion has found its masterpiece, decentralization. Bitcoin promised liberation from central authority. No banks, no kings, no borders. A trustless system governed by code, immune to corruption. But Machiavelli would have seen the flaw instantly, because power does not need to be visible to exist, it only needs to be structured. Decentralization didn't destroy hierarchy, it refined it, turning overt power into invisible architecture, replacing visible rulers with coded laws, and governance with consensus so complex that obedience feels voluntary. This is the anatomy of modern control, the silent machinery behind the blockchain. It doesn't rule through fear, but through participation. The governed validate their own subjugation one block at a time. In Florence, power was distributed across republics, councils, and guilds. Each claimed autonomy. Each swore they served the people. But behind every vote stood a network of financiers and patrons, subtle, loyal, permanent. They didn't need to command. They simply designed the system. Crypto governance has followed the same pattern. The people vote with tokens. They speak of democracy, of community decisions. But the votes weigh not in voices, but in wallets. The richest participants cast the heaviest shadows. Machiavelli would recognize this instantly. He once wrote, "The people are easily deceived by the appearance of good, though it is the contrary. DAO governance, yield farming, liquidity mining, these are the modern republics of finance, open in form, unequal in function. To rule in the age of blockchain, you don't need armies or laws. You need influence over the incentives that make people act." And Bitcoin's design, elegant, immutable, ideological, became the perfect structure for invisible control. No one commands miners, yet miners obey the same rules. No one owns the protocol, yet a few control its narrative. No one writes new laws, yet software updates decide the fate of billions in capital. It's not tyranny, it's engineering. Machiavelli believed that stability comes not from justice but from predictability. Bitcoin's genius lies there, a system that creates order from collective faith. Every node verifies, every miner competes, every participant believes they are acting freely. But freedom without alternative is merely organized compliance. Look deeper. Even in a trustless system, trust reappears not in people but in platforms. Exchanges, custodians, wallets, oracle networks, the middlemen that decentralization was meant to erase, they became the new Medici banks of the digital age. You can trade Bitcoin without trusting a bank, but you can't trade it without trusting someone. And those someones, the unseen custodians of digital liquidity, now sit at the center of the financial web. This is the paradox Machiavelli would admire. A system designed to eliminate rulers ends up creating a new aristocracy. Not of blood or office, but of access. The miners with the cheapest energy. The developers with commit access to the code. The whales whose transactions sway markets by silence alone. Each one a node of power, invisible yet indispensable. Power. In this new world doesn't command, it configures. It's written not in decrees but in parameters. Hash rate, block size, gas fees. Quiet instruments of influence invisible to those who only see price. Bitcoin's consensus mechanism, proof of work, is Machiavellian perfection. It rewards participation while concentrating power in efficiency. The more you invest in control, the stronger your voice becomes. The illusion remains democratic. The outcome remains oligarchic. And yet the system thrives because it feels fair. Because meritocracy, like virtue in Machiavelli's time, is the most elegant disguise for hierarchy. Governance tokens tell the same story. They promise equality, yet deliver hierarchy mathematically. In DAOs, voting power flows to those with the most capital. In proof-of-stake systems, influence compounds for the already powerful. We call it decentralization, but it's the same architecture as the Florentine oligarchy, just encoded in blockchain syntax. The old rulers hid behind religion, the new ones hide behind algorithms. But both speak the same language: inevitability. In both systems, disobedience feels impossible, not because it's forbidden, but because it's pointless. Machiavelli once advised rulers to appear merciful, faithful, humane, upright, and religious. Today's rulers appear decentralized. They speak of freedom while building empires of code. They promise transparency while designing complexity. They cultivate faith in systems that cannot feel and obedience to protocols that cannot forgive. This is not conspiracy, it's evolution. The system doesn't need a villain, it only needs design. And design, when perfected, becomes indistinguishable from destiny. The anatomy of control is not built on oppression, it's built on participation. The people run the nodes. The people mine the coins. The people guard the network. And through that act of faith, power perpetuates itself. Florence was once the same, a city where freedom became ritual and participation replaced rebellion. Bitcoin is the digital Florence, an open republic whose citizens maintain their own obedience in the name of liberation. Machiavelli would have admired it deeply because he never despised power. He studied it. He understood that control survives by adaptation, and Bitcoin is its latest masterpiece. The world doesn't need kings anymore. It has code, and code, like history, serves those who understand it. Machiavelli once wrote, "Men are governed by two things, love and fear." 5 centuries later, the market runs on the same code. Scroll through any crypto forum and you'll see it, a congregation, not a community. The hashtags are hymns. The charts are scripture. The volatility, a test of faith. They call it hodl. But it's not just a meme, it's a modern liturgy, belief disguised as strategy, an oath repeated by the faithful in every cycle of pain. Because crypto, like every revolution before it, found its strength not in mathematics, but in myth. It gave people a story, that they were rebels, builders, visionaries, that every crash was persecution, every bull run, redemption, and that one day when fiat collapsed and the world awoke, the believers would inherit the earth. It's not finance, it's theology. and Machiavelli would have recognized it instantly. He lived in a world where churches defined morality and morality defined obedience, where belief was not optional but essential, because faith was the architecture that held society together. He understood that people don't obey force, they obey meaning, and in the age of Bitcoin, meaning has become the new currency. The crypto faithful aren't trading assets, they're trading identity. To own Bitcoin is to be something, a dissident, a thinker, a survivor of the old world. It's not investment, it's initiation. You don't just buy it, you join it. That's the brilliance of the system, because when people fight for belief, they don't question it. When they identify with the revolution, they'll defend it, even against reality. Machiavelli would call that the highest form of control. To turn obedience into pride, every crypto crash follows the same ritual. First denial, then anger, then renewed conviction. And after each fall, the ideology grows stronger, because loss doesn't break belief, it purifies it. When altcoins burn, the faithful return to Bitcoin. When exchanges collapse, they blame corruption, not the design. Every failure becomes prophecy fulfilled. Every betrayal a sign of testing. Every doubt heresy. This isn't coincidence, it's psychology. Machiavelli wrote that the ruler must build institutions that endure even when the ruler is gone. Bitcoin did exactly that. Satoshi vanished and belief multiplied. A myth was born, the faceless founder, the immaculate conception of digital money. No king, no priest, no leader. Just scripture written in code and spread by missionaries in memes. And what could be more powerful than a religion without a god? A creed that renews itself through collective belief, immune to death, immune to blame. That's not a market. That's immortality engineered. Crypto's emotional economy runs on two levers: fear and hope. Fear of missing out, fear of collapse, hope of sovereignty, hope of escape. The same duality Machiavelli observed in politics. He warned that a wise ruler must balance them. Never too much fear to cause rebellion, never too much hope to cause complacency. The modern crypto architects have done the same. Fear maintains discipline, hope maintains participation. It's why volatility is not a flaw, it's ritual. Each cycle cleanses and reaffirms the faith. The chaos keeps believers engaged. The instability keeps them loyal. Because stability breeds boredom, and bored followers stop believing. Machiavelli would have seen the cycles not as market failure, but as psychological maintenance. Every pump is a sermon, every crash, confession, every recovery, resurrection. The architecture of faith doesn't need priests anymore. It has influencers, charismatic prophets wrapped in digital robes. Their gospel, don't sell. Their miracles, screenshots of gains. Their commandments, be early, be brave, believe. Machiavelli once wrote, "A wise prince must learn how not to be good." In crypto, the same lesson applies. The powerful don't preach morality. They preach inevitability. They don't demand loyalty. They inspire devotion, because faith in inevitability is the modern form of obedience. When the crowd believes that the system cannot fail, they stop asking who benefits from its success. The film's narration slows, a whisper, almost elegiac. You can see it everywhere now. The rituals, the idols, the faith. White papers read, like gospels, logos like symbols of divine order. The blockchain explorers like scripture indexes, people checking block confirmations as if reading horoscopes, seeking signs of fate. Every address on the ledger is a testimony. Every block mined, an answered prayer. Crypto didn't replace religion whilst it digitized it. It turned worship into participation, ritual into transaction, and faith into code. And yet in that faith lies both freedom and danger, because belief, once commodified, becomes exploitable, and whoever can shape belief can shape behavior. That is why the whales, the developers, the venture funds, the new princes of finance don't fight the faith. They nurture it. They need the believers to keep believing, to keep validating, to keep mining the meaning that sustains the machine. Machiavelli once warned that those who build on the people build on mud. He meant that emotion, while powerful, is volatile. It can empower or destroy. The same applies to Bitcoin. Its strength is its story, but stories can turn. Faith can fracture. And when it does, the architects who built on it must adapt or vanish. That is the unspoken truth of every system built on belief. It is only as strong as its illusion. And illusions, no matter how beautiful, must be maintained. Because the people don't want freedom. They want something to believe in. And belief, as Machiavelli knew, is the finest currency ever minted. Every empire begins with an idea, but it survives through architecture. The Renaissance had its cathedrals, crypto has its code, and behind both, there were always the architects, men who understood that influence is built not on visibility, but on structure. That power doesn't need to shout when it can simply define the rules of the game. Machiavelli knew them well. In Florence, he watched the Medici shape nations not through thrones but through balance sheets. They lent money to kings, funded popes, financed wars, yet appeared as servants of commerce. They ruled by necessity. If you wanted to trade, you needed their trust. If you needed their trust, you needed their terms. The same principle governs the crypto elite. They built not kingdoms but frameworks, exchanges, stable coins, wallets, and protocols, each one designed to look neutral, but all built on strategic dependence. They are the architects of digital dominion, invisible rulers of a borderless empire. They do not conquer, they configure. They do not issue decrees, they deploy updates. The masses believe they own crypto, but ownership is only a surface illusion. Every transaction, every trade, every breath of liquidity passes through their networks. They decide what tokens are listed, what data is tracked, what value is visible. Every innovation, every rebellion, every community-driven project quietly funnels through their rails. Machiavelli warned that men should either be caressed or destroyed. The new rulers do both, algorithmically. They nurture believers with profits and crush dissent with code. A protocol update can silence a critic more effectively than any sword. Because when the rules are mathematical, morality becomes irrelevant. Power today doesn't wear robes or armor. It wears neutrality. The architects don't say, "We rule you." They say, "It's just how the system works." Consider the exchanges and the digital equivalents of Renaissance banks. They hold the keys to the kingdom, yet claim no throne. They profit from chaos from both buyers and sellers, from every transaction made in faith or fear. They don't predict the market, they are the market. Each price movement, each flash crash, each liquidity drought is a line in their silent ledger of control. You can see their fingerprints in every illusion of freedom. They promote decentralization, yet hold custody of billions in private wallets. They advocate transparency, yet hide their reserves in off-chain shadows. They sponsor the language of revolution, while quietly selling obedience disguised as access. It's not hypocrisy, it's strategy. The system isn't lying, it's doing exactly what it was designed to do. Machiavelli would have recognized their genius. In The Prince, he wrote that the wise ruler must act as the fox and the lion, cunning to detect traps and strong to break them. The crypto elite learned both arts. They use regulation as camouflage, playing the fox before governments, the lion before competitors. When power threatens them, they scatter into decentralization. When opportunity calls, they consolidate into corporate alliances. They are everywhere and nowhere, a network without a center, and therefore impossible to overthrow. Their power is systemic, not symbolic. They control incentives, not opinions. They shape the conditions under which belief becomes profitable. Even the miners, the supposed decentralized enforcers of truth, answer to economies of scale. Hash rate has become territory, and energy consumption, taxation. The few who own the cheapest electricity rule over those who call themselves free. Decentralization has borders, after all. They're just invisible and digital. Every new cycle reveals another layer of this architecture. Decentralized finance promised autonomy, yet its liquidity pools are dominated by institutional capital. Stablecoins promised independence from banks, yet they're backed by treasuries and controlled by corporations. Web3 promised freedom from platforms, Yet the same venture funds own the infrastructure. The crowd sees freedom. The architects see capture because they understand a principle Machiavelli wrote centuries ago. The wise ruler makes others fight his wars, yet he remains the master of the peace. That's how the crypto aristocracy moves. They let the crowd battle for ideology while they accumulate power through structure. They fund both sides of debates, decentralization versus regulation, innovation versus oversight, because every argument leads back to their architecture. Every winner owes their survival to the system the architects designed. But the most Machiavellian brilliance of all is this: the architects don't hide behind secrecy, they hide behind transparency. Blockchains are public, everything is visible, and that visibility creates complacency. When you can see every transaction, you stop asking who controls the map itself. Transparency becomes a mirror, reflecting honesty while concealing depth. The crowd believes they can audit the system, but they never question its design. They see fairness because the data says it's fair. They forget that fairness, like beauty, is defined by the frame that holds it, and the frame belongs to the architects. Machiavelli would call this the perfect republic, a system that sustains itself through self-policing believers, a world where rebellion is redundant because everyone feels empowered, where rulers need not command because obedience has been programmed into participation. The Florentine rulers of his time used faith and art to unify the masses. Today's rulers use interfaces and incentives. The language changed, the method didn't. Control through beauty, order through complexity, power through participation. The architects are not villains. They are reflections of human nature, of ambition, of the endless drive to build systems that serve control disguised as order. They simply mastered the lesson that Machiavelli taught. The ultimate power is not to rule people, but to rule. The conditions under which people rule themselves. They don't hold the coins, they hold the consensus. They don't print the currency, they define what value means. That is the new dominion, unseen, unbreakable, and perfectly obedient to the oldest law of history, that those who understand structure will always rule those who understand emotion. Every revolution begins with a promise, and every promise ends with power. The faces change, whether kings, bankers, developers, but the architecture remains. Each era builds new tools, new myths, new chains, and the people, believing they have broken free, simply learn to worship a different god. Bitcoin began as rebellion, a digital uprising against corruption and control. But rebellion left unchecked always evolves into governance, and governance, when perfected, becomes invisible. That is the quiet truth of history. The cycle of liberation and domination is not political, it's psychological, because people don't seek freedom, they seek certainty, and those who provide certainty will always rule. Machiavelli saw this in Florence. He watched citizens cry for liberty while begging for stability. He wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." But he knew a deeper secret. The best rulers are neither loved nor feared. They are believed. The architects of Bitcoin understood this instinctively. They built belief into code, faith into math, destiny into design. They gave people a world without kings, but filled it with prophets. A system without masters, yet one that mastered emotion more efficiently than any empire before it. Because when rebellion becomes religion, control no longer needs chains, it simply needs consensus. Today, the same voices that once preached freedom now maintain the system. Developers release updates with papal caution, influencers deliver sermons about the next bull run, exchanges act as treasuries, venture funds as royal courts. Each claims virtue, each enforces structure, and yet the masses still whisper the same prayer: decentralize everything, as if decentralization were salvation, as if freedom could be coded. But Machiavelli would remind them, every code, every protocol, every law, no matter how pure, requires interpretation. And whoever interprets rules. Bitcoin's myth of neutrality hides its greatest truth. Neutrality itself is a position of power. When no one commands, design commands. When no one owns, infrastructure owns. When no one speaks for it, the narrative speaks for itself. That is the final evolution of control, the empire that governs by absence. The rebellion is over not because it failed, but because it succeeded. The dream became reality, and the reality became routine. Freedom was achieved, and then monetized. What was once protest has become policy. What was once ideology has become industry. And yet Machiavelli would not mourn this. He would admire it, because this is how all great systems survive, by absorbing their opposition, by turning resistance into fuel, rebellion into ritual, dissent into design. Every ideal is born pure, every system built upon it becomes pragmatic, and every pragmatist, sooner or later, becomes a prince. But there is still one final lesson. In every age there emerges a small circle of minds, not rulers, not rebels, but observers, those who learn to see the mechanism beneath the myth. They are the ones Machiavelli wrote for, not the princes who sought power, but the thinkers who understood it. To them, Bitcoin is not salvation or slavery. It is simply the latest expression of an eternal pattern, the will to organize chaos into order, to turn human emotion into structure, to build cathedrals of control from the bricks of belief. And once you see that pattern, you no longer belong to it. You step outside the simulation. You become unreadable, untouchable, ungoverned, not because you reject the system, but because you finally understand it. That is the real end of rebellion, not the collapse of tyranny, but the rise of awareness. Machiavelli's final writings were not instructions for rulers. They were mirrors for humanity, reflections of our own nature. He showed that power is not a flaw in the system, it is the system, and that every attempt to destroy it only gives it new form. Bitcoin proved him right. In trying to escape the old empire, we built a new one, faster, smarter, more elegant. But within that empire lies the same possibility Machiavelli foresaw, the possibility of awakening. Because power, for all its inevitability, loses its hold the moment you see its structure. When you stop reacting to it, when you stop believing in its theater, then you become something rarer than free. You become aware. In that awareness lies a new form of wealth, not measured in tokens or trades, but in clarity, the ability to move within systems without being owned by them, to participate without surrender, to profit without worship. The Machiavellian of the digital age doesn't fight the blockchain. He studies it. He learns its incentives, its psychology, its fractures. He uses its rules to build independence, not identity. He doesn't seek to destroy power. He learns to design around it, because power, once understood, becomes predictable, and predictability, as Machiavelli knew, is the foundation of mastery. So the story comes full circle, from Florence to finance, from parchment to protocol. The tools evolved, the psychology didn't. The gold florin became the Bitcoin, the merchant became the miner, the Medici became the market, and the prince became the algorithm. History didn't repeat. It simply remembered, and in that memory, strategy never dies. History has no ending. It only changes its costume. From Florence to finance, from parchment to protocol, the same hands still move the world, unseen, unblamed, unbroken. But you've seen them now. You've watched how rebellion became routine, how faith became function, how freedom was coded into new chains. And if you've listened this far, you already sense it, the quiet pattern beneath every revolution. That power never dies, it adapts. Yet awareness is the one thing it cannot control, because when you understand the design, you step beyond it. You stop reacting, you start observing. So stay, keep thinking, keep watching, because this isn't just a channel, it's a circle, a refuge for minds who refuse the illusion. Subscribe, not to content, but to consciousness, to the study of power, perception, and the psychology that shapes it all. You've already left the crowd. Now step deeper into the silence. Strategy never dies, it only evolves, and those who see it early write the next age.